Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is the 1902 Cleveland Broncos AL MLB baseball season. The Cleveland, well, they had a new name. The year before they were the Blues, now they were the Broncos just for 1 year. They kept changing the name year by year. And Cleveland was playing in the American League again. Now, this was the third year of the American League. Second year as a major league, and there was war between the American League and the National League, as the American League was luring players to jump and break their contracts with National League teams for higher salaries. So for the players, this was a good time because they were making more money. And again, the Cleveland Broncos were playing at League Park in Cleveland, home games. Again, it was still a wooden structure. Was not yet a solid brick. And the team had a strong year. They finished in fifth place with a record of 69-67, winning percentage of .507, 2 games over 500, 14 games out of first. And this was the beginning of Cleveland becoming a strong contender and one of the best teams in baseball in the first decade of the 20th century. The first place team in the American League was the Philadelphia Athletics, who were 83-53. That was Connie Mack's team. Second place, the St. Louis Browns, 78-58. Third place, the Boston Americans, 77-60. They later changed their name to the Red Sox. Fourth place, the Chicago White Stockings, 74-60. Fifth place, the Cleveland Broncos, 69-67. Sixth place, the Washington Senators, 61-75. Seventh place, the Detroit Tigers, 52-83, tough year. Eighth place, the Baltimore Orioles, 50-88. Now the attendance for home games in Cleveland was 275,395, fourth out of 8, and the attendance more than doubled from the previous year. So there was excitement in Cleveland, and it was because in the middle of the season, Cleveland picked up two-star players, Bill Bernhard and Napoleon Lazor, who was actually one of the greatest players of all time. And the record after that was 58-43. They had a very strong finish, so there was hope. On Saturday, June 7th at League Park, Cleveland won a game 7-3 against Baltimore. There were 12,753 fans, the largest crowd at a baseball game in Cleveland history. Now, there was no World Series in 1902. There was still war between the two leagues, but there was a postseason, and the National League champions, the Pittsburgh Pirates, played an American League All-Star team. Games 1 and 2 were in Pittsburgh, and the Pirates beat Cy Young, who had jumped to the American League, 4-3 in Game 1, the former Cleveland Spider Cy Young, and they defeated Addie Joss, another Cleveland. Actually, it was a current Cleveland player in Game 2, 2-0. So and then games 3 and 4 were at League Park in Cleveland. So there's a strong Cleveland flavor to this. You know, the first 2 games had Cleveland famous star pitchers. And Game 3 was a scoreless tie after 11 innings, and Cleveland and Bill Bernhard, the Cleveland pitcher, pitched in that game. Game 4, Cy Young, who was actually pitching for Boston at this time, but he was the American League All-Star player, and he won that game 1-0 at League Park, and it was the last game. It was just sort of an exhibition series. Now, the manager for the Cleveland Broncos in 1902 was Bill Armour, who as a player, he'd played outfield. He was a center fielder, right fielder from Homestead, Pennsylvania. He died in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 1922 at age 53. Armour had played in the minor leagues for Bradford, Oshkosh, the Toledo Black Pirates, Kansas City Blues, and the Patterson and the Montgomery Grays between 1891 and 1896. So he'd just been a minor league player. He managed the Dayton, Ohio Old Soldiers / Veterans in the minors, and as a major league manager, he managed the Cleveland Broncos, the Cleveland Naps, and Detroit Tigers between 1897 and 1906. He later became the president of the Toledo Mud Hens from 1907 to 1911. In the minor leagues as a player, he had 43 stolen bases in 1891. In 1896, 52 stolen bases. So he had been a speedy fellow as a young guy. Later, he was a Cardinal scout. He had a restaurant in Minneapolis. In 1894, he was involved in a bad boating accident that nearly broke his back. In 1903, Armour discovered and signed Ty Cobb. Wow, that was something. In 1912, Armour explained his retirement from managing, quote, "I really believe that I would be a dead man now had I tried to keep managing a ball club. I proved one of the hardest losers in the game. I couldn't forget after the game what had happened during the battle. I worried so much that I couldn't eat. The result was that I found myself moping about during the evening, apparently sore at myself, the world, and everything else, and then decided that if I wanted any pleasure in life, I would have to give up trying to manage a ball club." Armour died suddenly in 1922 of a quote, stroke of apoplexy at age 53. Before the 1902 season, the season in question, during that winter, Armour tried to turn League Park into a skating rink. He thought it would be a business venture, but it didn't work because the water the water leaked. He wasn't able to contain the water in League Park, and the nearby city streets were flooded, and they became fit for skating. Interesting guy, Bill Armour. Now the starting lineup, Harry Bennis was the catcher. Bennis had a good year. He hit .312, 12 doubles, 7 triples, a home run, 29 RBIs, 3 stolen bases in 93 games. Bennis was from Farmington, New Hampshire. Died in Cleveland, Ohio in 1947 at age 73. Career average of .255, 5 home runs, 234 RBIs. Bennis played for the Cleveland Broncos and Cleveland Naps between 1902 and 1910, so his entire MLB career was with Cleveland. In 1902, he led the American League among catchers with assists and base stealers caught stealing. In 1907, Ty Cobb ran over Bennis at home trying to score on an inside-the-park home run and jarred the ball loose. Bennis lost his temper, picked up the ball, and beat Cobb over the head with the ball, had to be restrained by the umpire. Ty Cobb later said that Bennis was one of only 2 players that he intentionally spiked. So they had a tough relationship, Harry Bennis and Ty Cobb. After he retired as a player, Bennis worked for a furniture company. He died at home in Cleveland and is buried in Elmhurst Park Cemetery. Harry Bennis. Charlie Hickman was the first baseman, and he was a utility player as well. Hickman hit .378. Wow. 31 doubles, 11 triples, 8 home runs, 94 RBIs, 8 stolen bases in 102 games. He also pitched 1 game, had a record of 0-1 and an ERA of 7.88, 1 start and 1 complete game. Hickman was from Taylorstown, Pennsylvania. He died in Morgantown, West Virginia in 1934 at age 57. Career average of .295, really good. 59 home runs, 614 RBIs. As a pitcher, he went 10-8 with an ERA of 4.28 and 37 strikeouts. Hickman played for the Boston Beaneaters, New York Giants, Boston Americans, Cleveland Broncos, Cleveland Naps, Detroit Tigers, Washington Senators, Chicago White Sox, and back with the Cleveland Naps between 1897 and 1908. They called him Piano Legs. He had big legs. And he was an above-average base runner. He had 91 career triples and several inside-the-park home runs. He was a college baseball coach for 4 years at the West Virginia University Mountaineers team. Charlie Hickman, Piano Legs. Napoleon Lazor was the Cleveland's second baseman, and later he became manager in 1902. Lazor hit .379 for Cleveland. Wow, 35 doubles, 5 triples, 7 home runs, 64 RBIs, 19 stolen bases in 86 games. Lazor was from Woonsocket, Rhode Island. He died in Daytona Beach, Florida in 1959 at age 84. For his career, he hit .339. Wow, 82 home runs, 1,599 RBIs, 3,252 hits. As a manager, his record was .377 and .309 for a winning percentage of .550. He played for the Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Athletics, Cleveland Broncos, Cleveland Naps, and Philadelphia Athletics again between 1896 and 1916. He was the manager of the Cleveland Naps, player manager between 1905 and 1909. He won the Triple Crown in 1901. He was a 5-time American League batting champion, highest batting average in 1901, 02, 03, 04, and 1910. He's the American League home run leader in 1901, 3-time RBI leader, 1898, 1901, and 1904. He's in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame. Excuse me. He was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1937 with 84% of the votes from the voters. He was also known as Larry Lazor and the Frenchman. In 1901, with the Philadelphia Athletics, he set the American League all-time highest batting average with .426. Wow. He was very popular in Cleveland because he was such a tremendous player. In 1903, the team name was changed to the Naps, short for Napoleon, the following year. He was a big rival of Ty Cobb. In fact, if you've seen the movie Cobb, the actor Tommy Lee Jones refers to him as Larry Lazor. They were the two top hitters in baseball, and especially in the American League. He joined Cap Anson and Honus Wagner as the only players with 3,000 hits at that time. He's considered the best second baseman in Major League Baseball history, and the most outstanding player to wear a Cleveland uniform. You could say he's the best Cleveland baseball player ever. There's that could be debated. Cy Young, as a pitcher, was probably better. Nowadays, we tend to think of Bob Feller. Cy Young said this, quote, "Lazor was one of the most rugged players I ever faced. He'd take your leg off with a line drive, turn the third baseman around like a swinging door, and powder the hand off the left fielder." Lazor could really hit the ball hard. So he was a tremendous hitter, and he actually was a tremendous fielder. He could play any position. And second base, the catchers loved throwing to him because on an attempted steal, because whether the ball was high, low, left, or right, he could make the catch and make the tag. Lazor's parents were French Canadians. He had little formal education, came from a very poor family, the youngest of 8 surviving children. His father died when Lazor was only 6 years old, and he had to work growing up to help support his family. And he dropped out of school to work in a textile mill when he was only 10 years old. He was a semi-pro baseball player, worked as a taxi driver, and drove a horse and buggy. They called him the slugging cabbie, when he was playing baseball and working as a taxi driver. Lazor said this, quote, "When I told my father I had decided to take the job, he was very angry. He shouted that baseball players were bums and nobody respected them, but I was determined to give it a try at least one season." Lazor admired Mike King Kelly, Old Hoss Radbourn, and now when he got to the Phillies, Ed Delahanty did not want to play first base. Apparently he had been playing first base, and he wanted to go back to left field. And he said this to Lazor, quote, "Look, Sonny, you tell the boss you're a first baseman, and you and me are gonna get along fine." And that's exactly what happened. In 1900, Lazor missed 5 weeks with a broken thumb after getting into a fist fight with his teammate Elmer Fleck. In 1901, Lazor jumped from the Phillies in the National League to the Athletics in the American League for more money. Got a contract for $24,000 for 4 years. He was the first superstar to join the American League. In that same year, the Phillies sued Lazor, and the ruling was that he could not play for the A's in Pennsylvania, and that's why he ended up in Cleveland. Now, there's some debate about how he came. Some historians have said he was just a free agent. Others say free agent who signed with Cleveland. Others say that the traditional story is that he was traded to Cleveland, and Connie Mack repaid Cleveland owner Charles Summers for the financial help he had provided earlier to his team. Lazor was the top star in Major League Baseball in 1902. His first game at League Park, there were 10,000 fans. In 1902 and 1903, he could not travel. In Pennsylvania, he risked arrest, and he never played against, while these the court battles were ongoing. He couldn't play in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh. Well, not Pittsburgh was a National League team. In 1904, he was suspended for spitting tobacco juice in an umpire's eye. As manager, he forbade card playing and gambling among players, but he was considered too lenient. In 1905, he had sepsis from an untreated spike injury. There was dye from the stockings he was wearing entered his bloodstream, and he had blood poisoning. As a result of that, there was a new rule that players had to wear white socks under their colored socks, which they called sanitaries or sannies, to prevent that from happening. In 1906, he married Myrtle Smith and moved to a small farm outside Cleveland. In 1905, he was in an argument with the Naps' first baseman, George Stovall, and Stovall broke a chair over Lajoie's head. Lajoie said this, quote, "George didn't mean anything by it," and the two remained friends. He's ranked 29th out of the top 100 MLB players of all time. There's a line from the poem Yesterday by Ogden Nash from 1949, quote, "L is for Lajoie, whom Clevelanders love, Napoleon himself with glue in his glove." They called him the Big Frenchman. Now there's a book I'm reading right now called Napoleon Lazor, King of Ball Players by David L. Fleitz, 2013. It's really good. In 1989, baseball historians Pete Palmer and John Thorne ranked Lazor the third greatest MLB player of all time after Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. Lazor never played in a World Series, and this is partly why he's forgotten today. Apparently, the correct pronunciation of his name is Lajoie. It's a French name, but the public ended up calling him Lajoie, so I guess we'll stick with that here. But that's actually it means the joy, Lajoie. French Canadian, he had a farming background. His family they were very poor Quebec farmers in Canada, French Canada. There were severe winters and poor soil in that part of eastern Canada. Folks there were growing potatoes and raising chicken. As a boy, Lajoie's mother disapproved of his baseball playing. She considered it a waste of time and a distraction from work. He got the nickname Sandy because when his friends would come calling for him to play baseball, to join them in a baseball game, it was so his mother wouldn't know that he was leaving to go play with them, so that's why they called him Sandy. At age 20, he was working as a teamster, driving a team of horses in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, making deliveries. His first pro team was the Fall River, Massachusetts Indians, who signed him for a contract of $100 a month for a 5-month season. Lajoie said this, quote, "That $100 looked like all the money in the world." It was in the New England League, minor leagues. He was a bad ball hitter, disdained walks. He would swing. He was up there to hit. Lajoie was the biggest star in Fall River since Lizzie Borden, whom 3 years earlier was acquitted for murdering her parents. He hit .430 for this team, and then he was sold to the Philadelphia Phillies in the National League for $1,500. Lajoie could play any position except pitcher. They said that actually he could have pitched if he'd worked at it. And the public pronounced his name Lajoie, as we said. The Sporting Life said this, quote, "Lajoie is certainly a good man, and although he looks like a big, clumsy fellow, he puts the ball on a man faster than any player seen on the Polo Grounds this year. He is also a good batter." The new manager for the Phillies in 1897 was George Stallings, a disciplinarian, and it was said, quote, "He could fly into a schizophrenic rage at the drop of a pop fly." Supposedly, Stallings invented the word bonehead. Ed Delahanty had an ankle injury, and Stallings said that but he continued to play, and Stallings said that Delahanty could cover as much ground as, quote, "a sewer manhole lid." In August of 1897, Lajoie was drunk during a game and got suspended, so he was on the wrong road in life, at that point. He's making really good money. Stallings called many players, his manager, bonehead. There's a story that one day Stallings wanted Hank Gowdy to pinch hit, and he said, "Now you, bonehead, get up there with a bat and see if you can hit the ball." And supposedly 7 guys got up and went to the bat rack because he called them all bonehead. In 1898, Lajoie was considered the best Major League Baseball player, tremendous hitter and fielder. In 1901, with the A's, Lajoie was intentionally walked with the bases loaded. That was the first time that's happened. It's very rare, because you're giving up a run. In June of 1902, Lajoie signed with Cleveland, and the Sporting Life wrote this, quote, "The town is baseball mad. The addition of Lajoie and Bernhard has set the town afire, and now nothing is talked about except baseball. The big Frenchman is the hero of the town." So he did, again, he faced arrest in Pennsylvania, and that's why he would not, that's why actually he left the Philadelphia A's. He almost went back to the Phillies, but the owner was too hard on him, and he got fed up and said, "I'm not playing for you again." So, but throughout, in 1902 and 03, he could not play games against the Philadelphia A's. In 1913, Lajoie was invited on an around-the-world baseball exhibition tour. However, Lajoie was afraid to travel by water, and he said, quote, "I suppose the travel will all be by land." And of course, you can't travel around the world by land. So he didn't have a very good geography knowledge. And then they said, no, there's going to be some ocean travel. And so he said, quote, "That's too damp for me," and he declined. Very often he'd get seasick. He's afraid of traveling on the water. Now, the shortstop for the Broncos in 1902 was John Gochnar. Gochnar hit 185, 16 doubles, 4 triples, 37 RBIs, 7 stolen bases in 127 games. Gochnar was from Altoona, Pennsylvania. He died in Altoona in 1929 at age 54. Career average of 187, 0 home runs, 87 RBIs. Gochnar played for the Brooklyn Superbas, Cleveland Broncos, and Cleveland Naps between 1901 and 1903. He's been called the worst MLB player in history for his poor hitting. He played in the minor leagues until 1907. He was an umpire, and he worked for the Altoona Police as a department. He's also a Penn Railroad policeman and bartender. He died of pneumonia. Gochnar is the last MLB player to have 90 errors in one season. The TV series Bones in 2010, there was a reference to him. Vaziri, this character, talked about Gochnar and said he was the worst baseball player ever. In 2005, Congressman Rob Bishop of Utah called the Endangered Species Act, something he opposed, inept, in a way that John Gochnar was an inept player. John Gochnar, interesting fellow. Must have been a pretty good fielder. Bill Bradley was the Cleveland third baseman, and Bradley, tremendous player, hit 340, 39 doubles, 12 triples, 11 home runs, 77 RBIs, 11 stolen bases in 137 games. And Bradley was in his second year with Cleveland, played for Cleveland from 1901 to 1910. He set a record in 1903 with 3 triples in one game, and in Addie Joss's 1908 perfect game, Bradley made a sensational backhanded grab of a sharp grounder over through third base and threw out the hitter for the last out. Bill Bradley, tremendous player. Now in the outfield, Elmer Fleck was a regular outfielder. Fleck hit 297, 19 doubles, 11 triples, 2 home runs, 61 RBIs, 20 stolen bases in 110 games. Fleck was from Bedford, Ohio. He died in Bedford in 1971 at age 94. Career average of 313, really good. 48 home runs, 756 RBIs, 330 stolen bases. Fleck played for the Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Athletics, Cleveland Broncos, and Cleveland Naps between 1898 and 1910. He was the American League batting champion in 1905 and the National League RBI leader in 1900. 2-time stolen base leader in 1904 and 1906. Fleck is in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame, and he was inducted in the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1963 by the Veterans Committee. He had 1,752 hits. His career was curtailed by a stomach ailment. His father fought in the U.S. Civil War. In 1896, he used his father's lathe to make his own bat. He hit 438 in the minors for the Youngstown Puddlers. And he was, as a National League star, he jumped to the American League after the 1901 season, one of many players to do so, and went from the Phillies to the A's. He had legal trouble, like others, and came to Cleveland as a result. In 1907, the Tigers offered Ty Cobb for Elmer Fleck. And this is something that's been perpetually lamented by Cleveland sports writers, that we could have had Ty Cobb, but Cleveland owner Charles Summers turned it down when he heard that Ty Cobb was a problematic person. After he retired, Fleck lived in Bedford, Ohio. He enjoyed hunting and raising horses. He built buildings, got into real estate, and was a scout for Cleveland. 1970, he was one of 4 19th century MLB players still alive. As an elderly man, he answered requests for autographs, and he was inducted in the Hall of Fame when he was 87, and he said this, quote, "This is a bigger day than I've ever had before. I'm not going to find the words to explain how I feel." There was an Elmer Fleck statue dedicated in Bedford, Ohio in 2013, 5 years ago, and Mike Hargrove, Cleveland player and manager, attended. Elmer Fleck. Jack McCarthy was another regular outfielder. McCarthy hit .284, 31 doubles, 5 triples, 41 RBIs, 12 stolen bases in 95 games. And McCarthy was in the second of 3 years with Cleveland from 1901 to 1903. Jack McCarthy. Harry Bay was another regular outfielder. Bay hit .290, 10 doubles, 5 triples, 23 RBIs, 22 stolen bases in 108 games. Bay was from Pontiac, Illinois. He died in Peoria, Illinois in 1952 at age 74. Career average of .273, 5 home runs, 141 RBIs, and 169 stolen bases. Bay played for the Cincinnati Reds, Cleveland Blues, and Cleveland Naps between 1901 and 1908. He was a 2-time American League stolen base leader in 1903 and 1904. They called him Deerfoot. After he retired, he became a band leader for the Apollo Theater in Peoria, Illinois, and toured in the vaudeville circuit with Guy Kibbe. He also worked for the Peoria Fire Department and worked for the Illinois Secretary of State. As a player, throughout his career, he would bring his cornet with him on the road, and he also played the piano. Quite a musician as well. Harry Bay. Ollie Pickering was a substitute outfielder coming off the bench. Pickering hit .256, 5 doubles, 2 triples, 3 home runs, 26 RBIs, 22 stolen bases in 69 games. And again, Pickering had played for the Cleveland Spiders in 1897, and he was back again with the played for the Cleveland Blues and Broncos between 1901 and 1902. Ollie Pickering. Bob Wood was a utility player. Wood hit .295, 18 doubles, 2 triples, 40 RBIs, a stolen base in 81 games, and he had played for the Cleveland Blues the year before in 1901. Bob Wood. Frank Bonner was a spare second baseman coming off the bench. Bonner hit .280, 37 hits, 6 doubles, 14 RBIs, a stolen base in 34 games. Bonner was from Lowell, Massachusetts. He died in Kansas City, Missouri in 1905 at age 36. Career average of .257, 4 home runs, 115 RBIs. Bonner played for the Baltimore Orioles, St. Louis Browns, Brooklyn Bridegrooms, Washington Senators, Cleveland Broncos, Philadelphia Athletics, and Boston Beaneaters between 1894 and 1903. They called him the Human Flea. In June of 1905, his wife committed suicide, and pretty tough, and extremely tough. On New Year's Eve in 1905, he died of blood poisoning. Tragic. Jack Bonner. Jack Toney was a utility player. He played outfield and infield. Toney hit .286, 30 hits, 7 doubles, a triple, 11 RBIs, 4 stolen bases in 28 games. Toney was from Fort Thomas, Kentucky. Died in Covington, Kentucky in 1948 at age 68. Career average of .237, 3 home runs, 73 RBIs. Toney played for the Cleveland Broncos, Baltimore Orioles, Cleveland Naps, Washington Senators, New York Highlanders, and Boston Red Sox between 1902 and 1911. And he was of German descent. Jack Toney. Charlie Hemphill was a spare outfielder coming off the bench. He hit .266, 25 hits, 2 doubles, 11 RBIs, 4 stolen bases in 25 games. And Hemphill had played for the Cleveland Spiders in 1899. Charlie Hemphill. Ossie Schreckengast played some first base for Cleveland in 1902. He hit .338, 25 hits, 9 RBIs, 2 stolen bases in 18 games. And Schreckengast had played for the Cleveland Spiders between 1898 and 1899. Ossie Schreckengast. Zaza Harvey was an outfielder coming off the bench. Harvey hit .348, 16 hits, 2 doubles, 5 RBIs, a stolen base, and 12 games. And he had played for Cleveland, the Cleveland Blues, the previous year, 1901. Zaza Harvey. Hal OHagan was a spare first baseman. Hagan hit .385, 5 hits, 13 at-bats, 2 doubles, an RBI, 2 stolen bases in 3 games. OHagan was from Washington, D.C. He died in Newark, New Jersey in 1913 at age 43. Career average of 187 with 19 RBIs. OHagan played for the Washington Senators, Chicago Cubs, Cleveland Broncos, and New York Giants between 1892 and 1902. Hal OHagan. Peaches Graham was a second baseman. Graham hit .333. He played in 2 games, 6 at-bats, 2 hits, and an RBI. Graham was from Aledo, Illinois. He died in Long Beach, California in 1939 at age 62. His career average was .265, a home run, and 85 RBIs. Graham played for the Cleveland Broncos, Chicago Cubs, Boston Doves, Boston Rustlers, and Philadelphia Phillies between 1902 and 1912. His son Jack was also a professional baseball player. Peaches Graham. George Starnagel was a catcher. Starnagel played in 1 game, 3 at-bats, no hits, and a strikeout. Starnagel was from Belleville, Illinois. He died in Belleville in 1946 at age 72, and his MLB career was just with the Cleveland Broncos in 1902, that 1 game. George Starnagel. Now the pitching staff, the ace pitcher was Earl Moore. Moore, as a hitter, hit .212, 24 hits, 2 doubles, 9 RBIs in 36 games. His record as a pitcher was 17-18, an ERA of 2.95, 34 starts, 29 complete games, 4 shutouts, and a save. And Moore was in the second year of his time in Cleveland from 1901 to 1907. Earl Moore. Addie Joss was a tremendous pitcher for Cleveland. Joss hit .117, 12 hits, 3 doubles, a triple, 10 RBIs in 33 games. His pitching record was 17-13, an ERA of 2.77, 29 starts, 28 complete games, and 5 shutouts. Joss was from Woodland, Wisconsin. He died in Toledo, Ohio in 1911 at age 31. Tragic, died young. His career record was 160-97. A career ERA of 1.89. Unbelievable. 920 strikeouts. Joss played for the Cleveland Broncos and Cleveland Naps between 1902 and 1910. He was the Major League Baseball win leader in 1907, 2-time MLB ERA leader in 1904 and 1908, pitched a perfect game in 1908, and also 2 no-hitters. He's in the Cleveland Indians Hall of Fame and was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1978 by the Veterans Committee. They call him the human hairpin. He has the second lowest ERA in MLB history behind Ed Walsh. Joss also worked as a sports writer between 1906 and his death. In 1911, he died of tuberculosis meningitis, died very quickly. And now the Hall of Fame has a 10-year minimum, which was waived. Joss only played for 9 years in the MLB. His father was a cheesemaker and an immigrant from Switzerland, also an alcoholic. He died when Addie was only 10. Joss never drank as a result. In 1902, he married Lillian Shinovar. They had 2 children. At his funeral, the famous Billy Sunday, who had been a pro player, and became a famous minister, officiated. In the minors at Toledo, Joss learned baseball from team captain and former Cleveland Spider Bobby Gilks. Now, I'm reading a book called Addie Joss, King of Pitchers by Scott Longert, 1998. And Joss was a fine book. Joss was kind and friendly and had a warm and friendly smile. He put people at ease. He was a good student growing up. He played high school football, and he was a tackle for Juneau High School, graduating in 1896 in a class of 5. At his graduation, he gave a speech about Nathaniel Greene, who was an American revolutionary, one of the top generals of George Washington during the American Revolution. Joss had been planning to become a teacher, and however, got into baseball, and he played baseball in the summer after high school, and then in the fall he taught school. He taught school for a couple years. Started his pro career with the Toledo Mud Hens in 1900, made his debut against Mansfield, Ohio, and won 16-8 on opening day. His future wife, Lillian Shinovar, was in attendance. In 1901, his first game was against Marion, Ohio, won 9-8. And in Cleveland, he was known for his work ethic and sportsmanship, very well liked in the American League. Not your typical hard-drinking, brawling player. He was a good player to attract ladies and children and families to the ballpark. His first game for the Broncos was a one-hitter that should have been a no-hitter. It was a bad call by the umpire. Fly ball to right field, which was caught, although somewhat close to the ground, and the umpire ruled that it had bounced and was trapped, and that wasn't true. So he got robbed of a no-hitter in his first game as an MLB pitcher. And early in that season, between starts, Joss played for some first base because they were short at that position. Addie Joss, tremendous player. Bill Bernhard was third in the rotation. Bernhard hit 200, 18 hits, 4 doubles, 6 RBIs in 27 games. Pitching record of 17-5, 24 starts, 22 complete games, 3 shutouts and a save. Bernhard was from Clarence, New York. He died in San Diego, California in 1949 at age 78. Career record of 116-82, 3.04 ERA, 585 strikeouts. Bernhard pitched for the Philadelphia Phillies, Philadelphia Athletics, Cleveland Broncos, and Cleveland Naps between 1899 and 1907. They called him Strawberry Bill. After he retired, he was a manager in the Southern Association and won a title in 1908 with the Nashville Vols. Bill Bernhard. Gene Wright was another starting pitcher. Wright hit 143, 10 hits, 2 triples, a home run, 5 RBIs in 23 games. His pitching record was 7-10 with an ERA of 3.95, 21 games, 18 starts, 15 complete games, a shutout, and a save. Wright was from Cleveland, Ohio. He died in Barberton, Ohio in 1930 at age 51. Career record of 14-26, an ERA of 4.50, and 140 strikeouts. Wright pitched for the Brooklyn Superbos, Cleveland Broncos, Cleveland Naps, and St. Louis Browns between 1901 and 1904. Gene Wright. Oscar Strait was another pitcher. Strait hit 211, 4 hits, 2 doubles, 2 RBIs in 8 games. Strait's pitching record was 0-7 with an ERA of 5.23, 7 starts, and 4 complete games. Strait was from Florence, Alabama. He died in Birmingham, Alabama in 1935 at age 61. Career record of 1-7 with an ERA of 5.56 and 10 strikeouts. Strait pitched for the Boston Beaneaters in 1899 and the Cleveland Broncos in 1902. So that was his MLB career. Oscar Strait. Otto Hess was another pitcher. Hess batted .071, 1 hit and 14 at-bats, an RBI in 7 games. His pitching record was 2-4 with an ERA of 5.98, 7 games, 4 starts, and 4 complete games. Hess was from Bern, Switzerland, in Europe. He died in Tucson, Arizona in 1926 at age 47. Career record of 70-90, ERA of 2.98, 580 strikeouts. Hess pitched for the Cleveland Broncos and Cleveland Naps between 1902 and 1908, and the Boston Braves between 1912 and 1915. He won a World Series title in 1914 for the Miracle Boston Braves. He was the first MLB player born in Switzerland. Now that 1914 Miracle Braves, they were in last place on July 4th, but won the World Series. Some believe the Cleveland Indians were named after them. With the Broncos were short on pitching in 1902, and manager Bill Armour, he had a neighbor named Harry Edwards, who was a plain dealer baseball writer. He asked Edwards to write an article asking local semi-pro amateur pitchers to come to League Park for a tryout, and Otto Hess was among those who showed up and wound up signing a contract and pitching for Cleveland. Otto Hess. Jack Lundbaum was another pitcher. Lundbaum hit .267, 4 hits, a double, an RBI in 8 games. Pitching record of 1-1, 8 games, 3 starts, and a complete game. Lundbaum was from Manistee, Michigan. Died in Manistee in 1949 at age 72. and his MLB career was just with Cleveland in 1902, the Cleveland Broncos. Jack Lundbaum. Gus Dorner was another pitcher. Dorner hit .385, 5 hits, 13 at-bats, a double, and an RBI. His pitching record was 3-1 with an ERA of 1.25, really good. 4 starts and 4 complete games. Dorner was from Chambersburg, Pennsylvania. He died in Chambersburg in 1956 at age 79. Career record of 35-69, an ERA of 3.37, 275 strikeouts. Dorner pitched for the Cleveland Broncos, Cleveland Naps, Cincinnati Reds, Boston Beaneaters, and Boston Doves between 1902 and 1909. His given name was Augustus, named after the Emperor of ancient Rome, Augustus Caesar. Gus Dorner. Dummy Taylor, not a politically correct name. He was another pitcher. Taylor hit 100, 1 hit and 10 at-bats, a stolen base in 4 games. His pitching record was 1-3 with an ERA of 1.59, 4 starts, 4 complete games, and a shutout. He was from Oskaloosa, Kansas, died in Jacksonville, Illinois in 1958 at age 83. Dummy Taylor's pitching record was 116-106, an ERA of 2.75, 767 strikeouts. Taylor pitched for the New York Giants, Cleveland Broncos, New York Giants again between 1900 and 1908. He won a World Series title with the 1905 New York Giants. He was the National League leader in games pitched in 1901. His real name was Luther Hayden, and he was deaf and could not speak. He became a hero in the deaf community early in the 20th century. They called any players who were deaf, they called dummy in baseball at that time. Dummy Taylor was a comedian. He would wave a lit lantern when the umpire refused to call games when it was getting too dark. As one time he was coaching third base, wore rubber boots because the umpire refused to call a game when it was raining heavily. Now there's a book called Havana Heat by Darrell Brock, 2011. It's a novel about Dummy Taylor's life. In 1900, with the Giants, there were runners on second base who figured they could take advantage of Taylor's deafness and steal third base. And he said this, quote, "I nailed each one. I walked over to Herman Long, the last man caught, and let him know by signs I could hear him stealing." He actually didn't say that. He signed that. In May of 1902, the Giants sent catcher Frank Bowerman to persuade Taylor to return. Now, he had jumped from the National League to the American League, and it was pitching for Cleveland. And so that's why he had a very brief career in Cleveland, because he returned. And so this guy was in the stands while Taylor was pitching, and they negotiated through sign language. Taylor said this, quote, "Frank sat in the grandstand, and every time I walked out to the pitching mound, he kept talking to me with his fingers. I kept shaking my head no, and Frank kept boosting the money. Soon I nodded my head yes, and that night I was on my way back to New York." So he played for Cleveland briefly, and they got him to go back to the Giants with more money. The Giants, on the New York Giants, the players all learned sign language, and so they could communicate with Dummy Taylor, and he was completely accepted by the team. And the Giants would go to vaudeville shows, the players, and the teammates would sign the jokes to Taylor so he could understand it. In May of 1902, in a game, Dummy Taylor, pitching for the Giants against Dummy Hoy for the Cincinnati, it was the first and only time 2 deaf pitchers faced each other. And when Hoy was batting, he signed to Taylor, "I'm glad to see you." There was an outcry from the deaf press against the nickname Dummy, which they felt was and is offensive. Taylor was inducted in the American Athletic Association of the Deaf in 1953 and the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame in 2006. John McGraw kept Taylor in the dugout to distract opposing pitchers. Even though he couldn't speak, he would emit a rattling shriek, and right when the opposing pitcher was about to pitch, and it was written, quote, it was called a crazed shriek of a jackass. He was once ejected for this, and the only time a deaf player was ejected for being too noisy. And one time he was ejected by umpire Hank O'Day because he was cursing O'Day in sign language. And O'Day said this. O'Day signed him and said, "Listen, smart guy, I've spent all my spare time this past week learning your language. You can't call me a blind bat anymore. Now take a shower. You're out of the game." That's pretty funny. Taylor was cursing him with sign language, and the umpire learned it and then threw him out of the game and told him through sign language. After he retired, Taylor worked as a teacher. He was also a scout, and he worked at the Kansas State School for the Deaf. In 1927, there was news of his death, which was not true, and there was a headline: "Dummy Taylor denies being dead." When he died in 1958, he was the last surviving member of the 1905 World Series champions New York Giants. So Dummy Taylor was a real hero in the deaf community, and actually the wealthiest deaf person in America in the early part of the 20th century. Dummy Taylor. Another pitcher was Charlie Smith. Smith hit 125, one hit, 8 at-bats in 3 games. Smith's pitching record was 2-1 with a 4.05 ERA, 3 starts, 2 complete games, and a shutout. Smith was from Cleveland, Ohio. He died in Wickliffe, Ohio in 1929 at age 48. Career record of 66 and 87. ERA of 2.81, 570 strikeouts. Smith pitched for the Cleveland Broncos, Washington Senators, Boston Red Sox, and Chicago Cubs between 1902 and 1914. He had some bad luck. He used to play for some bad baseball teams, so that's why he wasn't getting much support. In his MLB debut, he defeated Hall of Famer Rube Waddell of the Philadelphia A's 5-4 at League Park on August 6, 1902. In 1912, he led the National League with 6 relief victories. He was a fine control pitcher. There was a game at League Park, and Cleveland Bronco manager Bill Armour entered and spoke with the ticket taker Herman Schliemann. And he said, quote, this Herman Schliemann said, "Who will pitch for the Broncos today?" And Armour, the manager, responded, "I don't have a single pitcher ready." And then Schliemann recommended Charlie Smith, who was at the game as a fan sitting in the bleachers. And Armour found him, and Smith pitched and won that game 5-4. The Cleveland sports writer Franklin Lewis wrote, quote, "The young man who had come to the park as a spectator left as a hero, Charlie Smith." Another pitcher was Dyke Varney. Varney hit 167, 1 hit, and 6 at-bats and 2 RBIs. Pitching record of 1-1, an ERA of 6.14 in 3 starts. Varney was from Dover, New Hampshire. He died in Long Island City, New York in 1950 at age 69. Played for the Cleveland Broncos in 1902, and that was the extent of his MLB career. He also played college baseball at Dartmouth College. Dyke Varney. Lou Polchow was another pitcher. Polchow pitched in 1 game, batted 4 times, did not get a hit. And the pitching record of 0-1, an ERA of 5.63, 1 start and 1 complete game. Polchow was from Mankato, Minnesota. He died in Good Thunder, Minnesota in 1912 at age 32. Played for the Cleveland Broncos in 1902 and then in the minor leagues until 1910. His minor league record was 58 and 73, and he died of Bright's disease. He's the only person from Mankato, Minnesota to play Major League Baseball. Dummy Leitner was another pitcher. His given name was George. He's another deaf fellow. He hit 250, 1 hit, 4 at-bats, and RBI in 1 game. His pitching record had no decisions and an ERA of 4.50, 1 start, and 8 innings pitched. Leitner was from Parkton, Maryland. He died in Baltimore, Maryland in 1960 at age 88. Career record of 0-2 with an ERA of 5.34, 4 strikeouts. Leitner pitched for the Philadelphia Athletics, New York Giants, Cleveland Broncos, and Chicago White Sox between 1901 and 1902. And again, he was deaf and nicknamed Dummy like other players from that era. Very politically incorrect, very offensive. That's what they did. After he retired, he worked for the Baltimore Sun newspaper, George Dummy Leitner. Another pitcher was Ginger Clark. Clark got in 1 game, batted 4 times, had 2 hits. His pitching record was 1-0 with an ERA of 6.00, 1 game and 6 innings pitched. Clark was from Wooster, Ohio. He died in Lake Charles, Louisiana in 1943 at age 64. He played for the Cleveland Broncos in 1902. That was the extent of his MLB career. They called him a 1-game wonder. As a batter, he was 2 for 4 with 2 runs scored, and he fielded 3 balls without making an error, a fielding percentage of 1.00. He pitched the last 6 innings of a 17-11 victory. In 9 seasons in the minor leagues with the Birmingham Barons, he won 133 games. Ginger Clark. Ed Walker was another pitcher. Walker hit .333, 1 hit, 3 at-bats in 1 game. Pitching record of 0-1 with an ERA of 3.38, 1 start and 1 complete game. Walker was from Cambois, England. Died in Akron, Ohio in 1947 at age 73. Career record of 0-2 and an ERA of 4.50, 5 strikeouts. Walker pitched for the Cleveland Broncos and Cleveland Naps between 1902 and 1903. And finally, Cal Vasbinder batted .500, 1 hit and 2 at-bats. He pitched in 2 games, had no decisions, and an ERA of 9.00, 5 innings pitched. Vasbinder was from Scio, Ohio, SCIO. He died in Cadiz, Ohio in 1950 at age 70, and his MLB career was just with the Cleveland Broncos in 1902. So that's the story of the 1902 Cleveland Broncos. It was a very exciting time, the beginning of an incredible era. We had these new star players, Napoleon Lazor and Addie Joss, and Cleveland was on its way to becoming a strong contender and one of the best teams in baseball in the first decade of the 20th century. God bless those fellows who played for the Cleveland Broncos in 1902, and everyone else associated with the team, including the fans, especially the Civil War veterans and the Spanish-American War veterans. Captains of the Cuyahoga, lovers of Lake Erie, Terminal Tower Power, fans of the Free Stamp statue, and the Fountain of Eternal Life, Euclid Avenue electricity. First Energy Stadium friends, Progressive Field pals, Quicken Loans Arena enthusiasts, Severance Hall stalwarts, Tribe, Browns, Cavs, Monsters, and Gladiators rule. Cleveland, City of Champions. It's been 70 years since 1948. This is our year. Cleveland is the best location in the nation on the north coast of America. New York is the Big Apple. Cleveland is a plum. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.